Achewillow, Season 2, Chapter 1, A Tale of Two Miriams. I sometimes wonder, what is it that people see when they walk into the Achewillow Cafe? Obviously, they see a coffee shop. Sight is probably the last of their senses to get engaged. From a block away, they've already smelled the aroma of warm sandwich rolls and sweet chocolate croissants. Crossing the threshold, the door chimes welcome them in with a song, and the brand new air conditioning system greets them with a refreshing cloud of cold, a reprieve from the day's oppressive heat. Here, they know, they can enjoy warm drinks at any time despite the crawling warmth of summer creeping in. The cafe itself is a cozy amalgam of old and new. Clean floors of cream-colored ceramic tiles with white grout and pale sage walls that are so freshly painted they almost still smell of latex. The furniture is a mix of tables and chairs, donated from members of the community and rescued from charity stores and antique shops. The new counter is made from a solid piece of wood, sanded clean on top but with edges still covered in oak bark. The mélange of modern and rustic feels like I brought a piece of Montreal with me to Achewillow. My own flag planted in the middle of Rue Principale. Here is Miriam Dufour's territory. But what do people think when they see me? It's no coincidence that I modeled the rebuilt Achewillow in such an eclectic way. If I were to venture a theory, I think people walking into my cafe assume I'm an employee here, not the owner. I feel used and tired, but I look no older than my age. I look like a student because, until just 9 months ago, that was indeed the case. I try to project a commanding presence, to show through the way I walk and the way I talk that I own the Achewillow Cafe. This isn't a summer job. I don't just stick a sandwich in a panini press and pour pre-made coffee into mugs. Those cakes and cookies in the display, those are my recipe. The 2 pies under the glass bells, the ones almost gone despite having been put there only this morning, I baked those at the crack of dawn. How many people see me and realize that I am Miriam Dufour, descendant of Doris Dufour, and that I run this place? Honey, I'm sorry, but these just aren't it. Olivia Figg is sitting at the counter, one hand touching her lips with its fingers while the other hovers over her steaming coffee mug, holding a pistachio biscotti. I followed Doris's recipe, I whine in response. And I think we both know that recipes are just a set of instructions. It's how you follow them that matters. As it turns out, my great-grandaunt had dozens of recipes for biscotti. Chocolate biscotti, cinnamon biscotti, and biscotti with every kind of nut you could imagine. There's even a chia seed biscotti that I thought turned out to be delicious. None of them seem capable of meeting Olivia Figg's expectations. At this point, I think she's just being intentionally difficult. I take one of the twice-baked cookies and give it a nibble. It tastes fine. But as I see Olivia abandon her half-eaten one on her plate, I pick up the whole batch and toss it in the trash. You didn't have to do that, Julia Remington, another of my regulars, tells me. But she wasn't going to eat them any more than I was. No one here eats biscotti. The only person in Achewillow who seems to want them is Olivia, and I can't seem to make them in a way that pleases her. I'm saved from the ensuing conversation by the song of the door chimes. The lunch crowd is just about due, and, as always, a half-dozen white-robed cloud worshippers form the vanguard of my noontime customers. Soon, they'll be followed by Arnold, who works at the barber shop a block down. He'll order a sandwich and probably whatever's left of the pie. Michael will come in, covered in paint stains, and I'll have some cookies on a plate ready for him. Maybe he'll have the painting I commissioned from him. It would help to finally dress up the empty walls. Orlean and Alessandria might drop by, and the employees of the bank up the street will surely stop in for their afternoon coffee order. The place will be full, and as everyone walks up to the counter, I'll have all of their usuals ready for them. I stroll back to my kitchen to get some fresh croissants. Ian and his fellow cultists enjoy their pastries as fluffy as the object of their worship. I peek into the oven to monitor the progress of some prosciutto I'm baking into chips for a salad when I hear subdued clapping from the dining room. Once more, the door chimes announce a new patron, but the commotion tells me this is someone special, or that their arrival is something to celebrate. My presence in Achewillow has been so short that I still don't come close to knowing everyone. I too often have to lean in to Gulliver or Olivia and whisper, "Who is that?" in their ear. Fortunately, everyone who lives here tends to be rather memorable, so it's no problem remembering who they are the next time they cross my doorstep, or remembering their specific order. With oven mitts still on my hands, holding a baking sheet of steaming croissant, I rush back to the dining room so as not to miss what's going on. The Honorable Marie Belle Byrne, mayor of the U.S. side of the city of Achewillow, or South Achewillow as some of the locals call it, walks in. Or rather, I should say, she hobbles in, aided by Miss Lagacé, her Canadian counterpart. The two mayors who share the helm of Achewillow are a daily presence at the cafe. They have, for all intents and purposes, their own table reserved in permanence. It straddles the national divide that bisects the dining room. In over 8 months of serving coffee and pastries, I've never gone a day without their presence in my cafe. Like the cloud that hovers over town, filtering the noonday light that streams through the front window, the mayors are a constant here. At least, they were until a few weeks ago. Just at the edge between winter and spring, the mayors had come in and ordered their usual. It was a busy lunch, but I remember them sitting at their table, eating their sandwiches and biscuits while sipping their coffee and tea. Anyone could tell that something was up. There was this tension in the air, like the room had some sort of weight that made sounds heavy and light slow. The mayor's presence cast a shadow on all the Achewillow. At the end of their meal, Mayor Byrne pulled out a large coin from her pocket and handed it to her counterpart. Mayor Lagacé flipped it and sighed. I heard it because we were all holding our breaths at that moment, though I feel I'm the only one who didn't know why. When Mayor Byrne saw the results, she broke down. Until today, I'd almost put the incident out of my mind. I know that sounds strange, but weird events are like trees in the forest here. They all sort of blend in. Just the other day, 3 patrons came in, all within the span of an hour, each asking me to cook them the equivalent of some sort of love potion. Apparently, that's something Doris used to do. After asking some questions, I realized that the first patron wanted to charm the second, who in turn wanted to woo the third, and, you guessed it, the third was in love with the first. I didn't do it because free will and all that, but it was almost cute in its own tragic way. Well, this sort of thing happens all the time. After the coin flip, the mayors stopped coming in altogether. They're good clients with deep pockets, excellent tippers too, so their absence was annoying, but also none of my business. I never bothered to ask why they were gone. I guess I should have. Mayor Lagacé is holding her counterpart's right arm, helping to steady her on uncertain legs. There's a bandage on Mayor Byrne's face, covering her left eye, and another wrapped around her hand. They make their way to the table, and Mayor Byrne is helped down into her chair. She smiles a broken smile at the client who supports her while the Canadian mayor walks over to the counter. Veronique Lagacé is all business as usual. She acts as if she didn't just play nurse to a gravely wounded city official of the same rank. Your usual? The question sounds stupid and loud, but I'm not comfortable prying, not with every eye in the Achewillow going back and forth between Mayor Byrne and I. Please, she answers, digging into her purse to pay. She picks out the exact amount, including a large tip, as she used to do each alternating day before the coin flip. Oh, I say, shy and hesitant, that won't be necessary. Why not? Why not indeed? I don't know. Pity for a wounded client? Greed because I'm glad to have some of my best clients back? Awkwardness because I don't know how to handle sharing the spotlight with important people? Let me just get your order then, I say, taking my stupid question with me. What happened? I'm sitting on the couch of the apartment above the Achewillow Cafe. This used to be Doris's place, and it still kind of is, in all the important ways. While the coffee shop under my feet had been destroyed and rebuilt, giving me a blank canvas on which to paint my name, the only changes up here are new floors in the corridor that run the length of the apartment. Fresh planks of hardwood and a new coat of varnish, along with the scent of turpentine, are the scars left over from the violent showdown that bled from the floor below last year. Everyone in the Achewillow discreetly gave their well wishes to Mayor Byrne on their way out, but none bothered to explain to me what happened. "Don't you read the papers?" Olivia had asked in answer to my puzzlement. But I don't. Never did in Montreal, and rarely do here. But all that I could find on the subject when I looked was a headline and a short article stating that, quote, the Honorable Mayor Marie Belle Byrne had been wounded in the execution of her duties, and that she was, quote, expected to make a full recovery and be back in the office before the middle of summer. It doesn't take a genius to see that Mayor Byrne would not be making a full recovery. When I brought her refill of tea, I noticed the bandage on her hand covered an empty place where her pinky and ring finger should have been. I also got a sinking feeling in my stomach when I got a good look at her covered eye. "If everyone seems to know, why don't you ask them?" Eric's voice is patient but tired. It's long past midnight here and 3 hours earlier in British Columbia where he's at. I don't know that I really can. "Why not? Hey, what happened to the mayor? See, any idiot can do it." It's not that simple. I want to explain to him how Achewillow isn't like other towns. This is a place where the strange strolls around in plain sight under a noonday sun, while even more bizarre and dangerous things lurk in twilight. If I haven't been told what befell Mayor Byrne, maybe I'm not meant to know. "I think it is," Eric counters, not quite impatient, but certainly a little tired of my defeatist attitude. "You want to know what I think the real problem is, Mims?" Sure. I hate the nickname, but I'll tolerate it from my brother, and I have a feeling I already know what he's going to say. "I think it's an ego thing. I think you're waiting for your friends or a customer to tell you because you figure that if it's important enough, they'd tell you. You keep thinking that you being out of the loop is to their detriment, not yours." That's a little harsh. I assumed he'd go after my stubbornness. I'm pig-headed, anyone can see that. I like to think of it as persistence, but I can see when one melts into the other and where it bites me in the ass. But I've never thought of it as an ego thing before. And I hate to admit where Eric might have a point. I've been filling some pretty big shoes here, and so far, I've done way better than I expected. Way better than I had any right to. So maybe I do believe that I'm deserving some level of importance. I stopped a demon's killing spree. That's got to count for something, right? "No, it isn't," Eric presses on. "Don't take this the wrong way, but that's your problem. You're smart and talented, and you think everyone should bow to that. And maybe you are owed more respect than you get, but I don't know if that goes so far as city officials answering to you." White-knuckled, my fingers tighten on the phone in my hands for a moment. A spark of old sibling rivalry lighting the otherwise peaceful relationship between Eric and I. I rein it all back, if only to avoid proving him right. He probably sensed my reaction through the phone because he goes on to say, "You've stumbled onto something good there, Mims. Don't ruin it for yourself." That's Dad speaking. No, this is me. But even if I do sound like Dad, a broken clock is right twice a day. Bringing up our father is always the best way to make sure Eric and I are still on the same side. The enemy of my enemy and so forth. He's still pissed about the holidays? He's disappointed you didn't come, but I think that maybe he was almost proud that you decided to put work before hanging out with your friends and family. That would be a first. I can't remember when, since I first learned to ride a bicycle on my own, my father had been genuinely proud of me. On a good day, I would settle for satisfied. When I got accepted in cooking school, he was satisfied, but wasn't shy in saying that making stews and pies was a waste of my potential. When I got together with Trevor, and inevitably broke up, he was satisfied I'd found a serious relationship, but also never let me forget that it fell apart. Learning that I got a coffee shop from some great aunt of his had stung his ego. The apple fell right at the tree's foot in my family. While I may tend to perhaps think my talent goes unrecognized, it's a tendency I've inherited from a long line of Dufours before me. My dad loves me, so his jealousy expressed itself in a long list of insistent offers to come down to Achewillow and help with the business, which was met with staunch but polite refusal on my part. Unstoppable force meet immovable object. Well, I say, trying to hide my surprise. Maybe there's hope for the old man still, or maybe he's just getting soft in his old age. Maybe. Or maybe he's like the rest of us, and he can't believe you're settling for a coffee shop in a town that's barely on the map. There's a clear answer to that, and it stings to admit that it's got everything to do with my ego. Not only do I have a coffee shop here, one that I own and operate on my own, where I'm appreciated by patrons and needed by clients, but I'm also the successor of Doris Dufour, a pillar of the community, or so Helen Edna, notary public, told me. Above all else, I'm the one who stands, wooden spoon in hand and clad in an apron, between the citizens of Achewillow and a murderous hunger demon. I can't tell Eric that, but here I matter. I matter more than I did to my teachers, to Trevor, and sometimes I catch myself thinking, to my family. Maybe I'm the one who's getting soft, I reply. I can sense the doubt in Eric's silence, and I'm not sure how I'll disarm him if he pries too much, but fortunately, the sound of the oven in the kitchen comes to my rescue. I gotta go, Eric. Cakes are ready. Are you still working? Mims, you're going to kill yourself. It's fine, I reassure him. This is what I love to do. I'd be baking for myself if it wasn't for the cafe. My thumb hits the red button on the phone to hang up before Eric can bombard me with concerned questions and recommendations. Limbs ache and complain as I pull myself up from the couch. I feel heavy and lazy, like a pair of invisible arms are pulling me back to the comfort of old cushions so that I can rest my weary bones. For the first time in months, I feel a tightness in my abdomen where the hunger demon stabbed me. If I were to pull the apron aside and my shirt up, I'd see a scar, still red and gnarly, where its claw ran me through. Sweet, hot air greets me as I open the oven door. I can tell from the golden hue of the top of the cakes, along with years of experience, that these petits fours are ready. Still, diligent as ever, I stick a toothpick into one just to make sure. Perfect, I whisper with satisfaction. I set the cakes atop the stove to cool. The comforting warmth of the kitchen wraps itself around me for a moment, a gentle, soporific hug that whispers promises of rest if I would just allow myself some sleep. But there's a bowl of batter on the counter with a plastic ladle sticking out, blueberry muffins that need to be put into the oven. While those bake, I have to start on the tedious task of wrapping forks and knives into napkins, and then I have a vinaigrette to mix. If all goes well, I'll have most of the baked goods ready for the breakfast crowd tomorrow by the time I go to bed around 2 a.m. The rest, including the chocolate ganache for the petit four, I can handle before I open the cafe at 6:30. Maybe, if I'm lucky, I'll get to ask one of the regulars what's up with Mayor Byrne. Until then, I've got my own business to take care of. I look at my cooling petit four. A dozen delicious-looking pastries, a magical glyph hand-drawn and inserted into the bottom of each cake. They are guaranteed to sate even the most unnatural of hungers. Or at least, I hope they're guaranteed. Week after week, I risk my life to feed the hunger demon one of these cakes. But the last batch felt weaker somehow. It worked and the demon wandered off, satisfied each time, but I feel like the intent is losing intensity. I try to focus on the demon's curse and breaking it for just a few days, but fear and doubt get in the way. The less confident I get, the higher the chances that I might do it wrong. If that happens, then what? Then what? Orlean asks, his small eyes unblinking and his jaw slack with fascination. The morning had passed in somewhat of a haze. Looking at life through the fog of exhaustion, I'm reminded of shopping for ice cream after leaving the door for the frozen foods open too long. Cloudy frost obscures my vision like the lack of sleep muddies my thoughts. Then, Gulliver continues his tale, the cops just let him go back with Dahmer. They thought it was some sort of lover's quarrel and wanted nothing to do with it. But at the end of the day, Conarac Synthesin Foam was dead.
That's terrible.
Orlean's outrage sounds deep, as if the injustice had just been done to him directly. I shake my head and blink my eyes, a weak effort to banish the cobwebs from my brain. Gulliver has been regaling Orlean with tales of Jeffrey Dahmer's terrible crimes, and I'm only now realizing how strange the exchange is.
I don't get it, Orlean continues. Why would they just let that boy go back to a stranger's home like that?
Gulliver laughs, his throat bare as he looks to the ceiling in the process. His jovial laughter is always so loud and raucous that it either inspires suspicion or cheer. You're either intoxicated by the exuberance or cautious of why a big man is suddenly so loud. Really? Gulliver seems incredulous. I thought a church guy like you would be on board with how the cops handled that.
First of all, Orlean protests, I'm not a church guy. I am an agent of the Inquisition. Second, I resent the implication that I would send a boy to his death because of discomfort regarding his lifestyle.
That's the first incredible part of this conversation. Orlean is, as far as I can tell, part of the actual Inquisition. Or at least he and his partner believe themselves to be. They're not what I would have expected the Inquisition to be, which is why I'm not as surprised as Gulliver at Orlean's seemingly off-brand tolerance. I lean down and sit on my haunches, balancing a tray of freshly baked pastries, some still steaming, on my knees. I keep my ears perked up and listen while I fill up the display under the counter with brownies, muffins, brioche, and petit four. Anyway, Gulliver picks up his tale. A month later, Dahmer was in Chicago when he—
Do you mind?
I recognize the voice that interrupts Gulliver's story, and I spring to my feet at its sound. Helen Edna, notary public, isn't one to elicit this warm of a welcome from everyone in town. She is every inch as boring and meticulous as her vocation implies. Helen is precise and thorough, which may not sound like much, but she wields these attributes like a surgeon's tools. Helen, your usual? I ask, putting myself as a buffer between her and Gulliver. No love lost between these two.
Of course.
She grants me a rare, small but honest smile and fishes a large wallet from a small purse she carries at her elbow. They both match the smart navy blue business ensemble she's wearing. I assume that, this early in the morning, Helen is on her way to her office, a few blocks down, to meet some client or other. Miss Dufour? She asks, picking a fresh bill from her wallet. Miriam? Has anyone mentioned you look like hell? Helen Edna, notary public, does not mince words. I'm fine, I tried to preemptively reassure her. I think of Helen as a friend. She's been unusually kind to me and has, in her own way, always been there to save my ass. If Olivia is my surrogate Achewillow mother, Helen is my father figure. She's miserly on warmth and affection, but expresses herself through action and devotion. You are not, she says, looking up at me again. Her steel blue eyes scan my face. I can see her taking mental notes of every line near my eyes and the level of discoloration in my skin. She's not just noticing how tired I look. She's cataloging it. Do you keep track of the hours you work here? Do you keep a log of your efficiency? I shake my head. Neither of these things had even occurred to me. The Achewillow needs a certain amount of food in inventory and to be open a specific number of hours to serve the community. That's all there is to it. Tomorrow, she says, picking up her cup of coffee and a small bag with a brioche inside. Drop by my office. I think it's high time I gave you a primer on running your own business. Doris didn't leave you this cafe so you could run it into the ground. Or kill yourself. Keep the change. I'm about to mumble a thanks and a protest, something about not having time to meet her for business classes, but her attention is once again on Gulliver. Mr. Kemper, try to keep your gruesome tales to yourself. You're driving away customers. And with that, Helen Edna, notary public, leaves the Achewillow. That's the second thing about Gulliver's conversation with Orleans. Not only is he speaking to an inquisitor about serial killers, but Gulliver is himself named after the notorious co-ed killer, Edmund Kemper. It's a marvel to think that listening to a man named after a human monster, telling stories about another human monster to yet another man tasked with hunting non-human monsters, isn't the weirdest thing that I'm liable to see today in Achewillow.
Your friend has a point, Miss Dufour.
Orleans speaks up, sliding his cup of coffee over for a refill.
You do look more exhausted with every day. Have you ever considered holding shorter hours?
Looking across the dining room, I can see half a dozen people already sitting down with mugs, cups, and plates. Some are enjoying the quiet calm of the cafe, while others are reading off their phones or newspapers. If the Achewillow wasn't open, they would have to go somewhere else. Somewhere with worse food and terrible coffee. As if reading my thought, the copper and brass contraption that serves as a coffee machine hisses. Whether in agreement or complaint, I'm still unable to decipher. I can't. I have a responsibility to my customers. Or does my ego just prevent me from allowing my customers to eat anywhere else? Can't serve your customers if you're dead. Gulliver pipes in, ever the cheery dash of sunshine. I'm not going to die. At worst, I'll collapse on the counter one day and the raccoons will take the opportunity to eat everything in the kitchen. Napping on the counter is meant as a jest, but contemplating the idea, even as mirth, has an odd sort of appeal. I'm surprised to notice I've still got the banknote Helen left in my hand, and that it's for significantly more than the cost of her modest breakfast. She's too meticulous to have made a mistake, so she's either being unusually generous and this is an act of pity, or she's trying to prove a point that I'm no longer rested enough to pay attention. Or both. I go through the motions of putting the money in the register, separating the portion that should be considered tip from the actual cost of the food and drink, when the door chimes. Another customer, another usual to remember. The task feels draining to contemplate. It's not the first time I've felt this way. After all, this is the service industry. There are always hours of the day when time seems to stand still, and customers who just rub you the wrong way no matter what. There's this one old lady, Jasmine, I think she's called. She always orders a cold brew, even when she first started coming in January. And while I prepare her order, she'll critique every pastry in the display. Every complaint of the food she's never tasted always circles back to how her children would have hated my baking. This instance feels different, however. Less a symptom of the day-to-day dreariness of customer service as it is the irritation of nerves frayed down to nothing. She's right. Olivia's cheery voice cuts into my introspective pity party. You do look like hell. Thanks. The annoyance drains from me. Olivia's caring tone is like a balm on my otherwise raw disposition. She's carrying a bag in her arms, and if I were to venture a guess, it contains apple marmalades and jellies for me to use in my cooking or sell next to the register. I can't sell any of the Figs hard ciders, but there are other things that can be made with apples and sold. Oh, don't thank me yet, she says, putting the bag on the counter for me to inspect. Thank me once I've come up with a solution. Peeking into the bag, I'm satisfied that my suspicions are confirmed. I pull out one of the octagonal glass jars, artfully topped with a piece of patterned cloth held by a ribbon, and adorned with a sticker that sports the Figs Orchard logo. Unless you can find a way to clone me, I think like hell is going to have to become my signature look. Olivia says, pulling up a stool to the counter. I'll have my usual. Hold the biscotti. That stings, but I bite my lip and abstain from any protest, busying myself instead in preparing her order of coffee. I exchange the steaming mug of hot coffee for a handful of coins from Olivia's purse. She peruses the display, which has a few patches of fog left over by the cooling pastries I just placed, but nothing seems to strike her fancy. I should have made some apple strudels. Since I have all three of you here, I venture to ask, breaking the heavy silence, I have a question maybe you could answer. Gulliver, Orleans, and Olivia exchange a look, a mixture of amusement, curiosity, and concern, respectively.
What can we do for you?
Orleans asks, ready to satisfy my curiosity. Olivia sips her coffee, watching me carefully over the rim of the mug, trying to guess what's on my mind. I've been wondering, I venture carefully, as if I was delving into secret Achewillow lore. What happened to Mayor Byrne? My panel of experts exchange another look, this time as if they're trying to silently decide who should give me the bad news. Whatever quiet telepathy they perform, Olivia seems to have picked the short straw, and she laboriously puts her mug back onto its plate. "Oh, that," she begins, doing a bad impression of nonchalance. "Well, I suppose something must have gone wrong closing the annual Hellgate." Achewillow is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You have no idea how much it helps. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Visit ko-fi.com/Achewillow to donate a cup. Questions? Comments? Email us at achewillow@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Achewillow.